Hello! What I'm going to show you today is how I'm going to sow the first of my brassicas. Now I'm still harvesting brassicas from last year, so some of them take a long time and they're a big investment because they're in the ground for a very long time. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to sow my Brussels sprouts. Now these are ones that I sowed last year, but I didn't want to sow the whole packet because there were so many of them in here. The Brussels sprouts I am still harvesting now. They're not massive, the Brussels sprouts, and I think that's due to the fact that I did sow them very late last year because I was sort of I was chasing my tail all last year trying to get the beds constructed and filled and then everything in. So everything was just a little bit behind last year. So I'm going to start these as early as I can, and hopefully they will be much larger this time next year or by the end of this year. Also, you may well have found that your brassicas struggled last year because it was so hot. They really hate the hot weather, brassicas do, and they don't do very well in it at all. So if you did have problems with your brassicas over the summer, don't worry, try again this year. It was an extreme last year from one thing to another, and the summer in the UK was unbelievably hot and a lot of plants loved it, but an awful lot of plants, especially the brassicas, really struggled. The other thing I'm going to sow today are a few cauliflowers. I've just got a few seeds left in the cauliflower packet which I'm going to sow. The cauliflowers are called Orkney, and I grew these last year as well, and they did really well. I still need to get my cage constructed. I've got all the wood, and hopefully in the next few weeks I'll be able to construct a couple of brassica cages so that I can put some wire, very fine wire mesh around there, and stop the butterflies getting in. The Brussels sprouts are called Braemar. So if you are growing cauliflowers or Brussels, some need to go in a little bit later, so just check your packet to make sure. But I'm putting these together because they're both brassicas and they need to be sown in exactly the same way. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. So what I have here, I've got two little seed trays. Make sure that there are drainage holes in the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I've just filled these with some multi-purpose compost. Just gently pat it down so it's level. You don't have to push it down too hard, but just gently pat it down so it's level. If at this point your compost is really dry, then I would suggest you give it a water. But this compost is really quite damp, so I'm not going to water the compost here, because otherwise it will just get too damp and the seeds will then start to rot because the compost will be too wet. So in here I'm going to put the cauliflower seeds. As I say, these are called Orkney. Now I don't know whether you can see because my hands are so dirty. They're the tiny little seeds. Brassica seeds all look roughly the same. They're little round balls. Some are slightly darker than others. I've only got about half a dozen seeds here, but I want to use them up. There were 30 in the pack, so I obviously sowed more last year than I thought I had. Let's just make sure I haven't left any in there, because you always get, oh look, there's one hiding right down the corner. There we are. There's always one. So once you've got them on the compost, they're actually quite difficult to see. So if you notice that there are two very close together, maybe move them a little way apart from each other. If you can't find them, then don't worry. So all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to put a little bit more compost on top like this. Just gently sprinkle it on top, and make sure that you level it out so that all the seeds are covered. Now the germination rate for brassicas is usually really very good, so I would suggest that you sow maybe about 3 or 4 more than you want. So the germination rate is about 95%. So if you only want, say, about 6 plants, maybe sow 10 seeds or so. Cauliflower don't freeze very well, so they're really a vegetable that needs to be used straight away. So I'm now going to do the Brussels sprouts, and I will do the Brussels sprouts in exactly the same way. And when I have done those, then I will show you both of them. Well, here they both are. I've labelled them both, so there's the cauliflowers there and there's the Brussels sprouts there. So I haven't watered these at all, as I say, because the compost is quite damp. So I will check in a couple of days. It depends what the weather's like outside. And if they need watering then I will just water them very carefully. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a propagator lid over the top of both of these, and it'll just help keep a little bit of extra warmth in. Hopefully in about 2 weeks they might start poking through the soil, but it depends on the temperature. If it suddenly drops, which I think it's supposed to on Wednesday, it's supposed to get quite cold down here, but then the temperature is supposed to go up again. But again, it depends what the nighttime temperatures are like. So we'll just have to wait and see. We'll just have to be patient. So I will keep you updated on their progress as they grow. They will look, as they start to grow, once they first pop through the soil, they will look exactly the same. So it is incredibly important to make sure that you label them correctly. Otherwise, until they get really quite large, it's going to be very difficult to see what they are. And obviously, if you're growing several varieties or a couple of varieties of cauliflower, then you want to know which ones are which, because some are very difficult to tell apart from. Some are very easy because they look completely different. So just make sure that you label. I'm always one for making sure that you label them properly. So that's the brassicas, the first of the brassicas sown. I will have a lot more to sow as we go through, but that will be for next month. I think next month the rest get sown, but anyway, when I do those I will show you. Well, I hope you found that interesting, and just remember that you don't have to, like I do, I sow most of my stuff from seed. 99% of my stuff I think I grow from seed, but you don't have to grow it from seed. So don't feel that you're not gardening properly if you don't sow from seed. If you've only got a small space and you only want a couple of Brussels sprout plants, then wait for a bit and go and buy a couple of small plants from the garden centre, or order them online, the little plug plants to be sent to you, because then you are looking after them after that, so you are growing them. So don't feel that you have to grow everything from seed. Please don't feel like that. Well, I hope you found it interesting, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye bye.